With Rebel to Scargiver coming out April 19th on Netflix and in selected movie theaters, I kind of wanted to go back and watch Rebel Moon Part 1 again. Because when that came out in December, I got to be honest with you, my excitement for it and my level of interest was not there. I did watch it in December, and I still stand by some of the comments I made. But I thought, you know what, now that I've got the time, now that it's coming up, just a mere, month away, let's look back at Rebel Moon. Now, we know that Rebel Moon originally was a Zack Synder Star Wars pitch. Obviously. It doesn't mean that this finished project of Rebel Moon was the Star Wars movie. I'm sure, he has talked about elements of it, and obviously the name clearly comes from Star Wars. And he talks about that in interviews. I just read an interview with him where he discusses the sequel or the second part of Rebel Moon. And he talks about how he took elements over the years and made this movie once the rejected pitch and the whole story that we all know kind of fell by the wayside, and we have this. So taking that away and understanding that the influence originally came from a Star Wars movie concept, it's still really not a good movie in the first part. I understand that we're going to see the second, and I hope that we get to build off that. But my biggest issue with it is probably one of my biggest issues with Snyder. I'm not going to come out and bash the guy. He's super talented. Sucker Punch, which quite frankly many people just kind of forget about, is one of my favorite Zack Snyder movies. 300 was super entertaining when that came out. Just a big, giant movie, comic book come to life. And The Watchmen, that is his best movie in my opinion. The Dawn of the Dead remake, one of the best zombie films out there, and I like the original a lot. Those movies are phenomenal. I see his vision. I love what he does with it. Man of Steel, I really liked, and then things went south for me. And now I'm starting to see what I like to call is a one-trick pony. Some people might call it stylistic choice. I call it a one-trick pony. Zack Snyder is amazing when it comes to beautiful cinematography, when it comes to these wide, big shots of worlds and galaxies and battles. He is great with that. I love his vision. I love that he's not afraid to kind of make it a little darker. I'm into that. He's talented. But I've always believed that Zack Snyder has to have somebody over him reining him in. Now, that's not to say that they need to pull like what they did with the Justice League. That was a mess, both versions. The Snyder Cut, overinflated, too long, incomplete mess. Much better than the original, but that's not saying much. But they need somebody to rein him in because he continues to do his same tricks that he finds either enjoyable, or he finds that are going to add to the story, or he just doesn't know what else to do over and over again. Here in Rebel Moon, as I watched it for the second time, you've got the first 30 minutes, which kind of feels like Inglourious Bastards almost. And I'm into it. I was drawn into it. It's good dialogue. It's world building. It's story building. And then the very first battle we have, what does Zack do? He flips on the slow-mo switch, and it just ruins the battle. Not only does he do that in that battle, he does it for almost every single fight sequence, walk, world building. Any moment he can, he does it. And I'm sorry, but it takes away from the story. Just as if you were going to sit there and have this ultra-fast fight scene without getting us to see the actual moves would take away from the story. This does too. And I just feel like there's a balance that he's not finding. I find it annoying. I find it very just hard to watch at times. The other thing is really, this particular part one was just go to one world, do something, okay, we'll fight with you. Go to another world, do something, okay, we'll fight with you. It is the Seven Samurai, obviously. It is Star Wars. It's all these movies combined to one with new characters, new worlds, and new names. But is it really original? I don't know. It's Dune. It's Star Wars. It's so many movies. And I'm not bashing it. For what it is on Netflix, sure, it's not worthy to be seen in a movie theater. Maybe. I understand why they would want it. Zack Snyder's a big name and he's got a huge fan base, but I'm watching it the second time. I'm going, can we pull anything original out of this? Look, we all knew the heel turn. We all knew what was going to happen. And then at the very end of the film, we have our Darth Vader, I don't know who that is, Darth Vader revival act. Let's pick up his dead body. Oh, he's not dead. He's back. And we revived him. We connected him to the Dune Terminator back-to-tank tubes where he could go meet the king, the slain king. And just, look, there are things of this movie that work. But the biggest thing that I wish Zack Snyder would have done would have trashed any element of what he had written for Star Wars and made it original. Because this is not Star Wars. And we have a lot of scenes in this movie that you could tell he wanted to put in Star Wars. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that, quite frankly, are wasted time. I'm not going to sit here and critique the dialogue. I think the cast is great. I think some of the shots are great. The last fight scene we had in this movie was the best fight scene of the whole movie, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. It's literally collecting a team to fight these people that we know nothing about. We got very little backstory in this film, and I'm really hoping that the second film we learn more. We learn more about the characters. We learn more about the robot that's just walking around changing his crown. We learn more about Stargiver, Korra. We learn more about all these different... We learn more about the big bad and find out what was he doing with those leeches or octopus or whatever that eel thing was. I felt like that one of the things that Zack Snyder does good is build characters. And in this movie, I didn't feel that at all. And again, I know it's part one, but is part two going to be that big of a deal for the big budget that they spent? I sound like I'm bashing him, and I sound like I'm not a Snyder fan. And as of late, I'm not. I do think that he has some really awesome potential, and I almost wish he'd team up with somebody else to handle the other stuff and kind of say, hey, Zach, we're not going to do that right now, but I love it. Let's put it over here. We're not going to steal that scene from 300 and implement it in every single movie that you've done. Like when he jumps, when he's running in slow motion and he jumps with the spear to stab the guy through the spaceship as he's shooting him, as he's shooting everybody. Like we've seen that in 3 or 4 of Zack Snyder's films already. It's time to come up with something new. That's my thoughts. I will watch the second one. I'm going to keep an open mind. And I will absolutely tell you, like, this is not a bad, awful movie. It's just not great. It's just not something to get excited about. And I feel like Zack Snyder's better than this, and he's got to let go. He's got to let go of this Star Wars concept. He's got to let go, and let's get back to doing something else. When I go back and I watch The Watchmen and Dawn of the Dead, I am blown away by it. I'm amazed. I really enjoyed Sucker Punch. I know a lot of people don't like it. I love it. I own it. And I love it. I don't know. That's my final thoughts on Rebel Moon Part 1. Let's see what happens with Part 2.